Okay, welcome everybody to the Mi Duole Podcast. I'm joined today by brother Dave Sharp. He's with us in the wings, Jake Cook and Spencer Chipping. So it's the four of us today. We have an awesome podcast in store for you where we get to know brother Dave Sharp. Dave, yes, it's going to be awesome.
Legend Dave.
Yeah, we'll see.
Before we get started, big thanks to all the team members who made it through episode 2 and want to continue to listen after we told you to stop wearing all the ridiculous outfits that we've seen. So huge thanks to everybody on listening. We also want to say that this podcast is sponsored by Profile. So a huge sponsor of the team, coming in big. And we thought we'd say that because we know Dave has used the products and is a big part of success with Profile. And Spence is connected with their success and growth here in Utah. So we'll kind of mention them throughout, but Profile Perform as a sponsor and on our jersey. So big thanks there. We know Morton Pedersen, our good friend, is listening. We got confirmation that he's in the University of Indiana's hospital getting an organ transplant for a crash he sustained a couple weeks ago. So big love to Morton. Stay strong. And he's got a GoFundMe page that you can donate there and provide some support to Morton. So love you, man. And then we've had some questions interesting over the last couple of weeks about team members who want to know like what to do on the team. I don't really know what else. They want to know, like, okay, they're joining, and maybe you guys can weigh in here. So it's like, hey, I want to join your team. But then it's like, well, what does that mean? They're like, yeah, well, now what? And so I'm like, okay, well, the first thing you need to do is like find out if this is a group of people you want to be with. It's not really about like I don't know what else it could be. It's like, do you want to ride with us or not? So if you're new, if you don't know what to do, I would say just, this is a team. So in any team, it's like, if you put into it, then you're going to get out of it, but you can't just sit back and be like, well, you guys didn't invite me on a ride, or I didn't know. Well, get engaged, find guys to ride with, participate on Strava, participate through Facebook, through GroupMe, and be part and contribute. And then I think it'll be a good experience for you. I mean, anything to add there? I don't know what else to say to guys. Okay.
Yeah, I do have something to add there, Stu. I mean, even before you buy a kit or get too involved, I would come and ride with the group a couple times, maybe 3 times. There have been, I don't say this lightly, there have been, a handful of guys that have come out, ridden with us, dropped 5 minutes into it, and it's like, it may not be a great fit. It is a competitive team from that standpoint of like, it's so you may want to just make sure that you feel comfortable riding with the group, and that's important.
I agree. I mean,
that was me, Chip. That was me, Chip. When riding with, I'm glad we have Dave on the first podcast, because that was me. Riding with Dave the first couple of times, I just got hammered, but it was great. It was fantastic. But I will say though,
when you ran into me too, right?
Yeah. I will say though, I mean, if you know someone on the team, like I would just echo what Chip said, just come ride with us a couple of times. Come see how it's like. Come check out the guys and get a feel for how people ride. And obviously, there's going to be some really strong guys, and there's going to be just guys all different kind of flavors. So.
But the team is also big enough and diverse enough, which makes it fun for you to find a place. I mean, I use Greg Iverson as an example of this, where he moves from Arizona, he doesn't know anyone, and he's like, hey, I want to ride with you guys. So he started showing up to team rides, started doing a mountain bike rides. He started, participating through group text, and it was like he fits in where he wants to fit in, and he kind of worked his way into finding his place as a member of the team. So anyway, my advice to new guys is just, if you want to be a great teammate, then get involved, do something.
Buy in. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Dave, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go.
Okay. I've got a short bio. I don't, if you can see him. Okay. You ready? It's not from LinkedIn. Don't worry. So when Dave was nominated as a member of the yellow jersey group, this is the script I wrote up. It says, having stood on the podium 15 of his 18 LOTOJAs, Dave knows a thing or two about the sport and is mostly a mentor more than anything, willing to share, coach, and teach the younger generation of riders that come up through the ranks. Dave is always willing to share his years of experience, but don't be fooled. He'll lay down the hurt. It usually starts on that hill right before Affleck Park on the way up Big Mountain. He'll stand up out of the saddle and put a pace down that most will roll their eyes at. His Mi Duole teammates said of him, he leads by example, is a true friend to follow. He's kind and caring, but fiery and competitive. And then on a side note, I think this is really fun, that Dave was also the first teammate to nominate another teammate to wear the yellow jersey, which I think is fitting for the kind of guy he is. And in our last podcast, we said that this podcast would revolve around tips and tricks from members of the team. And what happened was Dave sent in 3 kind of pieces of advice that I'm like, this has to be expounded on. Like, I can't stop with these 3 things. So we'll kind of save all those pieces of advice for a later episode as we dive into what other guys said. But Brother Dave, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Honored to be here.
Could you just tell a little bit about yourself, like family, what you do for a job, how you kind of got involved in the team, and just a little history?
Yeah. So I'm old, 57. I started riding when I was 25, and I'll talk about the challenges of riding at a young age, which all you guys are pretty young, but I've got 4 kids. I work for a bank in Southern California, which means I'm just working out of my home office all the time now. And I'm in corporate risk management. So I'll just give you a little background. I got my start in riding when I was 17. Our ward had a tradition of every summer, the young men, the teachers and priests would ride to Lake Powell, and then the ward would meet them down there. So we left on Thursday morning at 4:30 in the morning. And I rode my sister's bike, and it was cool because it had these big foam pad grips on it, right? Toe clips and everything. And I was riding in gym shorts and high rider socks and gym shoes. Helmets didn't even exist back then. And I was wearing a jock strap. And the reason I tell you that is because we rode to Nephi on day 1. 110 miles, and it took us 12 hours, and we camped. So we carried our sleeping bags, and we carried everything with us on our racks. I woke up the next morning with a ping pong ball sized blister on my gooch, and had to ride to Gunnison. And then we went from Gunnison to Hanksville the next day, and then Sunday night we left Hanksville at 8:30 at night. And there were 18 of us, a couple of leaders, and we rolled into Lake Powell I did with my 1 leader at 3:30 in the morning, put our sleeping bag out in the dirt and slept. And then my dad drove down and we set up camp, and then the whole ward met us there Tuesday afternoon. So awesome. So it's 300 miles, and it was brutal, but it was so much fun.
That is the epitome of suffering. I mean,
right. That is like, so cool.
That is so cool.
Well, dude, and at night, coming out of Hanksville, we're rolling down this big hill, and one of the dudes rubbed a wheel, and he went down hard, total road rash, and we all just kept going, and one of the leaders just took him back to Hanksville, and he couldn't even go to Lake Powell. He was so jacked up, but we're just like, yeah, whatever.
Dude, so tell us a little bit about your history of like racing. Like, how'd you really get into the next level of like where you joined?
So when I got married, Jeannie said, you don't even have a bike. So she bought me a bike for my birthday, my first bike, which I think now she looks back on with regret. But so I just started riding. My first big victory was riding up Emigration Canyon. And at the last hairpin, there used to be a little creek down the side of the road, and the last hairpin, I had to pull over and dunk my head in the creek. I was so spent, just up Emmy. And then I started doing Little Cottonwood because I wanted to do the big Snowbird Hill climb. So
playground.
I started doing that. I had to stop at Gate A and walk for a while, my first time up. And I just more and more. So then I hooked up with Corey Gillette. He was on 9th and 9th back then. And we started riding Big Cottonwood every Thursday morning. And I've been doing that for, I don't know, 25 years.
Was
every
Corey
week
a
since.
Mi Duole guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Corey was on Mi
One of the early
Duole,
guys?
and yeah, he was awesome. So he kind of got me stoked about racing, and he had done LOTOJA before, so he said, you got to do LOTOJA. So I started training for it. Biggest ride I'd ever done in my life was Alpine Loop, and I got home from that and sat under the swamp cooler for a half an hour. I was just dead. So my first LOTOJA, I mean, you know, I was a Cat 5 and didn't know how to race, and just sat on the front the whole time and pulled most of the way, and got in a break with 3-4 other guys. And at our first feed zone, pulled over, you know, to get our feed. And key mistake I made was I put a new chain on my bike the day before. And so then it was skipping a gear every time because the guy didn't set the pin right. So I got off at that feed zone and I started plying my chain to try to soften it up so it wouldn't skip, and it broke.
Oh.
So I'm in the break with these guys, and one dude had a chain tool, so he let me borrow it. And then my buddy who was doing my support, we fixed my chain, and then I rode pretty much about 100 miles solo, and I was so dehydrated and so spent. I hooked up with a couple of guys in Snake River Canyon, and I mean my only goal was to finish. And much to my surprise, when I finished, I realized or saw that I had taken third place. So we didn't plan on spending the night. So we rented a hostel for $40, spent the night, collected an award. And from then on, man, I got the fever. Yeah. So the next year, I was set to race it, and ended up racing in a category with all these guys, these other legends like Dan Moser and Chris Peterson and Ken Jones and Clyde Doan. And we had a great time. And so I kind of got to know them, and it was funny. The race back then came off the straightaway, and then it turned up into Teton Village. And right before the big turn, Clyde says to me, hey, let's just all roll this in together, right? Because it's been a hard day. So we'll all just cross together. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, then he drills it.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. So then he drills it. So I'm like, I'm not having any of this. So I just jumped them all and ended up winning it that year. So it was awesome. But what that did for me was it introduced me to these guys who were on back then. It was Mi Duole, but it was under the banner of 9th and 9th. And I realized that they all lived pretty close to me. So we just started riding, and it was that was my start. We started doing all our training, all our riding together, and these guys kind of became my best friends at the time.
Nice. When you posted your advice to me, this is kind of what I want to dig into, because I think it's really important for any rider to hear. So Dave's first piece of advice is happy wife, happy life. And he's got this awesome paragraph. I don't know if you want me to read it, Dave, or if you just want to expound on it. I mean, what's best? Do you want me to read some of it and then you
go for it? I don't have it in front of me.
So Dave says that cycling is a demanding sport, both physically and on a marriage and family. For those of us chasing the podium, cycling is very time consuming. Maintain balance when you train so it doesn't impact your family. LOTOJA, for example, is a blessing and a curse. There's nothing like the feeling of winning and standing on the podium. The problem is the euphoria of that achievement does not go away, and it only fuels a stronger desire to repeat that performance the next year and the next year. The training required to maintain that level of performance comes at a cost. Train on your time, which for me is 5 a.m., home by noon on Saturdays. Be sensitive to the needs of your family, and don't let the podium cloud your priorities. Saturday morning soccer and football games are important. Better yet, engage your kids in cycling so they develop a love for the sport, which makes your hall passes easier to come by.
Great advice, Dave.
You got to expound, dude. It's so good.
Yeah, so I've got a great relationship with Jeannie, And I will honestly tell you that the only times in our relationship where we've ever had tension is over cycling. And it's either because I came in late on a ride and she was worried about me, or I'm spending too much time on the bike when I ought to be, doing stuff at home, spending time with the kids. I show up late, or I miss a soccer practice or a game or a football game. Or, expenses on cycling stuff. So I've learned over the years that, that the balance is important if you want to maintain harmony in your relationship. Now, she doesn't, participate in the sport. So for those of you who have wives who also participate in the sport, maybe this isn't an issue. And maybe it's skiing, or maybe it's golf, or maybe it's something else. But I think it applies across the board.
Yeah.
For about 25 years, I raced the crits every Tuesday night. And that was a challenge because I was in a bishopric calling for 5 years. And I'd have bishopric meetings every Tuesday night. As soon as I got home from the crit, I'd fly through the shower and go to bishopric. So, for 5 years, I was out all afternoon and evening, as well as then Saturday mornings, because, if you have an interest in LOTOJA, which, becomes kind of an obsession with some of us, the challenge is we start training hard for that in, June, July. And those are a lot of long Saturday commitments. I mean, for me, like I said, training in the morning when it kind of doesn't interfere with anybody else has kind of been my mode. I never really ride in the afternoons or evenings, because if I don't get a ride in early, I don't get a ride in. But, I just, that balance, and it's not just a balance in time management. I think it's a balance in perspective, because, mentally you can become obsessed with cycling and with winning, and that bleeds into everything, diet and the need for sleep, and the need for time on the bike, because I get up so early, I'm ready to go to bed at 9:30 at night, and the rest of my house
7:30 for me.
The rest of my household doesn't wind down till 11.
Dave, I got a question for you. Sorry to chime in real quick. Do you feel like you and Jeannie established a pretty good grip on the communication? I mean, as your cycling career kind of, got bigger and bigger. I mean, do you feel like you needed to communicate even more as it got bigger, or is it you guys kind of just,
No, I mean, you absolutely have to, because for us, we kind of also have that mode that you never go to bed at night mad at each other. So, we've had some late night discussions before we go to bed. She thinks I'm totally, she'll probably listen to this podcast, right? So I'll be totally transparent, but she thinks I'm a little over obsessed with cycling. And, but when I was racing the crits, I quit a couple of years ago. I was consumed with the crits and placing in the top 10 every night. And I was consumed with all the road races and LOTOJA. So it just kind of becomes overwhelming, and it's easy to kind of lose perspective on the needs of your family too. And the challenge is, for me, I started all of this when my kids were super young, and that's hard to do. I know a lot of you guys have really young kids, and they have needs on Saturday mornings just to be with them, and to do stuff with them. And that's the challenge with cycling. If you want to chase the podium, it's super time consuming, except for the three of you guys.
Oh man.
And maybe a few others on the team.
There is Chip, any other follow-up questions there for Dave?
Yeah, I think that the one thing that Dave has brought into as a mentor to me, and I've been riding with Dave for a long time, and that is the schedule and cadence that Dave maintains. I have been accustomed to finishing LOTOJA on a Saturday and riding immigration with Dave on a Monday. And
it's brutal.
that is
We've all been a part of that schedule.
That is how and so it's a question and more of a comment that for cyclists that are figuring out what their what they're doing or how to maintain, or if you want to be like Dave, the schedule and the cadence of how to manage your day, your time, your life, cycling life balance is all key into what Dave has accomplished.
I agree.
100%.
Yeah, man. It's awesome.
And it's hard, right? I mean, because I travel a ton. So I actually have a bike in my office in California. And, you know, one of the things I realized was I was seeing people who were good friends similar to me who were also traveling. And, you know, they got caught up in activities that weren't healthy and kind of destroyed their families. So one of the things I decided early on was I've got to engage when I'm not at home in healthy activities. Cycling's number one. So I shipped a bike to my office and I ride every night when I'm down there. Just to keep me occupied, not only fitness wise, but to keep me so I don't get distracted from my core values and dedication to my family.
Yeah. Dave, before I read your next piece of advice, I did want to. There's one thing that I think would be interesting to hear from you, which is, like, there are very few who I associate with who are intrinsically motivated the way that you are. Just like, whether it's outside or inside motivation, could you explain where it comes from? Like, where do you feel like the fire comes from with your, whether it's life or in cycling in general?
I think it's just because I'm inherently a super competitive person. I hate losing at anything, whether it's, you know, ping pong or cycling or whatever. And I think once I started tasting victory in races, it just further motivated me to be more disciplined, to learn more about nutrition, more about training. And what's interesting, right, is I'm to the point now in my life where it doesn't matter. I'm, for all intents and purposes, I'm kind of past or over the hill with that regard. I mean, I'm still competitive within my age category if I were to race LOTOJA or other things, but you know, I'm not going to go out and hire a coach. And a lot of you guys are doing that. A lot of you guys are hitting your prime, and I think that's you know, so valuable because you're learning stuff that didn't exist or wasn't available to me when I was your age. It would have been super helpful. And but you know, kind of like what Greg LeMond says, it doesn't get any easier. You just go faster. Everybody's going faster. And what I realized was, you know, when I really was kind of in my prime, 40, 45, I was riding a lot with Dan Moser and that group. And Dan is exactly 10 years older than me. And Dan was right there, you know, every pedal stroke to mine, if not beating me. And he was one of my primary competitors at the time. And I thought, man, I hope I'm as strong as you are when I'm 55. And Dan's now 65 and he's still killing it, or 67 because I'm 57. So, you know, I mean, one is the camaraderie, but because I love riding with friends, and I love being competitive. So, you know, our group rides oftentimes get a little spicy on the climbs, and I love that. But
who initiates that, Dave? You do.
Yeah, well, right. But here's the thing, and I'll bring some profile into this. You know, up until a couple of years ago, I was able to hang with all you guys who were, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years younger than me. And that was so motivating for me. But now what I'm seeing is I'm getting to that point where recovery is harder and age is just catching up to me. So I'm not able to be right there with you guys, which is really hard. But you guys are taking it to the next level, which is awesome to see. And I'm jealous because I wish I could rewind the clock 15 years and just do it all over again. But back to the profile thing. Another thing, when Spence, you and Stu introduced me to profile a couple of years ago, I thought, you know, if I always do what I've always done, I'm always going to get what I've always gotten. And I thought I ate a fairly lean and clean diet, and but I just couldn't lose any weight. And I thought if I could drop, I don't know, 10 or 15 pounds, I'd be more competitive. So I went on profile and I was religious about it. And probably too religious about it because my family really gives me a hard time about it. Because I'd carry my little sheet and calorie count every day. But you know what? It worked. I mean, I lost like 16 pounds. And what I realized was it wasn't that hard to change that lifestyle, but it helped me significantly on the bike because I was lighter and leaner and I became faster. And just because I shed so much weight.
I remember that transformation, Dave. I remember that writing to you a couple of years ago when you were going through that. I mean, I remember there was a struggle a little bit. I mean,
yeah,
hard, but dude,
it was hard.
Whatever, dude. I just remember,
man.
I just remember your gear just flapping in the wind, like baggy vests.
Yeah, I still have all those clothes and wear them. And that's the funny thing. But now, you know, it's funny is I have to work really hard to maintain my goal weight. I'm still eating the profile plan. And I cheat a little bit, but it's a real struggle. And I think that's just because I'm older and my metabolism's changing. But what I find is I may be able to hang with you guys to an extent on the road, but man, we get on Zwift. I don't know what it is. I just, you guys just destroy me on the big climbs.
Well, that's because Jake's weight is 15 pounds less than it should be. So don't feel bad.
Dave, you got a weight dope in there. That's standard, right?
Yeah, I got to figure that out.
Drop in a couple LBs, you'll be good.
Just set it at 153, Dave. You're good. Okay, I want to read this next one. I want to keep going. Okay, so his next piece of advice is be inclusive. I'll just read the paragraph. That was a good start. So cycling is a very social sport, whether casual or recovery, an intense training ride or race. But camaraderie is what makes it so much fun. My best rides are when I'm riding with friends. I also ride alone a lot, which is nearly not as fun. I've also done many races for many years with no teammates in my category, not nearly as fun. Mi Duole has become an identity of friendship. Share that love by inviting others to ride if you're not being invited yourself. When my son died, it was cycling buddies who got me back on the bike and shared my grief on 100-mile training rides. I cherish those moments and those friends who've become lifelong. Cycling's therapeutic on many levels, but the greatest therapy is when you're experiencing those wicked fast descents or thigh-burning sufferfest climbs next to your buddies.
Amen.
So true, dude.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, it's a very collegial sport. The biggest challenge for me this year has been COVID, because as you guys know, I haven't participated in any of the group rides. Jeannie's immunosuppressed, so I can't afford to bring anything home to her. And I even bailed out of LOTOJA. And that was so hard. It was so hard to make that decision. But the highlight for me is when we all join at the mouth of one of the canyons, and just the anticipation of just the camaraderie, and when the when the flag goes down and we just start to drill it on the climbs. I mean, for me, that gets me out of bed in the morning. And whether it's riding with one guy or with 15 guys. And, it's, that's what it's about. And that's why this team is so awesome, is because you can join any different group within the team and you'll be welcome and you'll have a great time and you'll laugh. And you'll probably get dropped. But, we're all friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it really has become this identity, thanks to you guys in building this amazing, this awesome network that we have.
Jake, any thoughts, any questions there for Dave? Anything you want to share?
Not too much questions, but just a comment. I mean, Dave, I remember when I first joined the team, showing up to those immigration rides in the morning, and this second point you said of being inclusive couldn't be more true. I mean, more spot on. I mean, as a young rider, I think I was probably in my late 20s, and here you are, your late 50s, and I'm showing up to these rides with these older guys, but you were always inclusive to me and to these younger guys in the team. And I think that kind of set the standard of the bar for me as when I first joined, is you were that guy that I looked up to and set the standard for everybody, just set the stage. And that's carried with me since day one. And here I am, 5-6 years into the team. And I still, these new guys show up, I try to have that same mentorship. Yeah. Hey, welcome to the team. What's your name? how long have you been riding? Things like that, because those are some really personal questions that you would ask me or any other new guys that would come on these rides. And so I just want to say thanks. I mean, this really touched me, this be inclusive part, because that's totally what you embody. Dave,
but then when you hit the switchbacks, you dump them. You leave them behind.
Whatever. It's called Dave calls it tough love. It is Mi Duole is tough love, and that's
no. It's this.
Seeing him go up that.
Go ahead. Let's see if we can't get a tune out of these old trombones, and then boom.
Going up that west side climb of Emmy Oaks, man, there's nothing better than chasing Dave up that. I mean, that is the worst. Emmy Oak Mondays. I mean, that's it.
Yeah,
I miss those days.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave. You're the man. Seriously.
Thank you.
Chip, anything to add?
No, Dave, as always, I think Stu has mentioned it before, and I think that it is actually outlined. I mean, I would finish it this way, Stu. When you shared the picture of Dave in the yellow jersey, it was the epitome of the yellow jersey mentor example. If there was the name Mi Duole in the dictionary, Dave's face would be right next to it. So.
Yep.
I appreciate that. Thanks, guys.
That's awesome. All right, let's do one more, and then we'll kind of wrap up as we come in for a landing here. So Dave says, savor every ride as if it's your last. Having the physical capacities to ride on the road, mountain or gravel or fat bike is a gift. I have taken this gift for advantage much too often. I'm addicted to cycling and become depressed if I don't ride 3 or 4 days. I need cycling in my life. However, I have several moderately serious accidents and one serious brush with death. We have teammates who have lost their lives while cycling, and this is devastating. Be smart, be cautious, be safe while riding, as you never know when it might be your last time on the bike. By savoring every ride, you live in the moment, and for me, this is also when I slay my dragons, which is critical to my mental and physical health. When cycling becomes drudgery, step away until you want it again. So good, dude. Awesome.
Good. Thanks.
How'd you come to that? I mean, how'd you come to this piece of advice?
So, I always have felt kind of invincible on the bike, and I've broken my collarbones twice, and I've crashed probably 20 times, and spent a lot of time in the tub scrubbing out road rash, and and it just seems part of the plan. But I've never had any real serious accidents until a couple of years ago. As you guys know, when I crashed on Royal Street, here's a picture of my helmet that still has a rock embedded in the vent, because I literally landed on my head and then slammed down on some big boulders. And I didn't realize it, but I had internal bleeding that could have been very, very serious. But I also could have broken my neck. I could have died. But I was lucky. But we don't have a few teammates who survived, like Tony Quinn. I mean, his tragic death, I don't know, it's been quite a while now, but was devastating to me, because Tony was a good friend and I rode with him a lot. And then Todd Wall most recently died from a cycling accident. He wasn't on our team, but several of us knew him. And so I think that I love cycling so much in every ride, whether it's on the trainer or outside, even if it's raining, which I hate riding in the rain. I mean, look, it beats work, right? And and it's a time to kind of escape and think hard and train hard. And so just don't take it for granted, because accidents happen, or you may have a change in your life circumstance or whatever. And so, let's make the most of every ride and squeeze the most out of every day that we can, and do it with our friends, with each other on the team. And when we can't do that during COVID, it just makes me that much more anxious to get out there and do it when we can. So, but be careful out there, because, I've been known to chase semis down Parleys and enjoy a nice semi-surf draft. And yeah, that is not smart.
Oh my gosh.
You're probably the Parley's local legend, Dave.
Jeannie's listening, Dave.
Yeah, I know. Jeannie
I'm checking Strava right now. It looks like Dave is the local legend coming down Parley's. Breaking news.
Yeah, it's true. Anyway, yeah, don't do that. But I mean, it's a total head rush, but don't do that.
I think it'd be fun for me. Jake, you've kind of shared your favorite experience with Dave, but it was early 2014. He called me. It was. I don't know if you remember this, Dave. It was Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I remember.
And we were like, oh, it's kind of warm, dude. Up Big Cottonwood we go. Me and Dave. Boom, 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 boom. And at about Mill D, it started to get kind of weird, like cold and whatever. And we looked back down the canyon, and it was snowing. And Dave took a selfie, like the famous, like me and Dave standing in Big Cottonwood. And I think it's still on his Instagram. But every time I go to his Instagram and look at it, I'm like, I cannot believe that I would go into Big Cottonwood and then get snowed on Valentine's Day, like morning of Valentine's Day.
It was cold.
But, dude, some of my favorite adventures though. And I think it's just so fun to have a friend and mentor that showed those things that hopefully we're kind of like passing on to the other new guys. I love it when a new guy rides with us and I'm like, well, you've never done Pine Canyon Road? Like, oh, it's really fun. Like, you're going to love Pine Canyon.
Or they're like trying to size up. They're sizing up like Dave, and they're sizing up these older guys. And then you just see Dave and them just ride off and they just bury him, dude. so great.
Yeah, and then we have guys like Jess Claypier on the team.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Well, he weighs like 90 pounds. So, I mean, that's cool.
Well, we probably better bring this in for an ending. Chip, Jake, any final questions or thoughts?
Thanks,
go
Dave.
ahead, Chip. Go ahead, Chip. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. And this has been a pleasure. People will really enjoy listening to this.
Well, likewise. Thanks, guys.
Dave, I appreciate you too, man. This has been a real pleasure for me, and always love. I feel like I'm a sponge every time around you, just trying to soak up everything I can to retain. So moving forward to cycling, just, it can be better like you. So
yeah, I've secured our first 200 first vaccines in the Salt Lake Valley are for the team, so we can all get back together and ride.
Nice.
Yes.
Well, look, I plan on doing this till I'm at least 85. So
yes,
keep the Strava going.
And for all those listening, subscribe to this podcast. We need to get some subscribers, and so we can keep this listening going, and get more interviews.
Yeah, we got to pay Dave for being on, right,
Dave? Right. Dave. Profile
right
shakes.
on. Right on, guys.
All right, dude. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dave.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.